Hey everyone. It's been kind of a rough time for me in terms of this topic, so I might be a little different when talking about it. It's very emotional for me. Also, it's really emotionally for me right now because this year is when things really came to a head, realizing that my father was just so absent from my childhood, and both my parents are basically estranged from me right now as they just don't like my life choices. So, it's Christmas next week, but not that it really matters because neither of them have contacted me for months. And I really don't know what sign I'll get from Christmas, but um, it's something that I could easily grow bitter over. But I want to talk about how this has affected me because I feel like a lot of trans men are affected by fatherhood issues because of the masculinity stuff. It's just kind of inevitable. So it's really hard to talk about fatherhood in America, I feel, because it's supposed to be Norman Rockwell type stuff. Throw football with your kid, um, do macho things, come home for dinner. Mom's got it all set out at the table. That never happened in my life. So, um, one thing that I noticed as I was an adult was that my father would actually play with the sons of his siblings or his friends way more than he ever played with me. There were times I tried to hang out with my father as a kid, and he'd shoo me off and tell me to go with my mom. And like, I don't know how much of that has to do with my gender. If it was because at that time I was still considered to be a girl. I didn't come out as a trans man until about uh 2016. So until then, they always thought of me as a tomboy or something. But it was just really difficult. Like I would be able to play with him whenever somebody else came over, and he. It's really been difficult feeling close to him. I There's some times where I've actually tried to ask him advice, and just just is like, stop bothering me. I don't have time for this kind of stuff. Um, Tried bonding with him over music. Tried bonding with him over his past. He never wants to actually tell me the truth about what his past was like. Told me he never did drugs, except for doing mushrooms this one time when I got confirmed from several other relatives that he's been smoking pot all his life. Just never really seemed to want to tell me anything real about him. Always wanted my mom to handle it, and maybe that was their couple issue. Maybe they had a marriage issue where they couldn't agree on how to raise me. But at some point in my adulthood, I wish they would have been clear about that. Like, I'm 41 years old. I never got the sex talk. Like, they just never got around to it. They never got around to telling me there was no Santa Claus. Never got around to telling me there was no Easter Bunny. Never got around to it. They never got around to telling me there was no Santa Claus. Never got around to telling me there was no Easter Bunny. Just stopped giving me things involving those holidays when they just kind of picked up that probably I didn't believe in those things anymore. Never had a truly important conversation with me in the right way in my life. So, um, I feel that a lot of stuff that my parents did wrong, they did together, but I want to talk about my father's role in things because I've really been focusing on my mother a lot, and when I do that, I always have this sense of, but I need to get my father to own things. I can't let him just slip by here without owning his side of this problem. He could have taken me aside at any time and taught me any number of things, and he didn't. There's stuff that dad knows how to do that I don't know how to do, and it's because he just never bothered. Um, didn't seem worth his time. She was in either a softball or baseball league. I can't remember if it was fast pitch softball, if it was fast pitch baseball, or if it was fast pitch softball. But he was in a softball league. He was in a pool league several years. He played racquetball, went to the gym, played pinball. had so many hobbies and shared nothing with me. I kept on feeling like I was sharing things with him, but just from a weird distance. Like he loved the pinball stuff, and I like pinball too. So he'd play pinball at the arcade, and I'd watch him play pinball. I'd try to figure out maybe what his techniques were, and sometimes he'd talk about them while he was playing, but usually he was just entirely focused inside. He never said, "Hey, this is a trick I know on how to get a good score." In fact, I'd say that anytime that ever I played the same game, let's see, 18, he was 25 years old when I was born. So I don't see why the competitiveness. I did have a male role model growing up who was close in the family. My uncle lived on the same road as I did until I was 16. Excuse me for a second. Um, and my uncle is actually my dad's youngest brother. Um, so I guess he was closer to me in age. A little hard to tell. He always seemed to be an adult to me. He was always working an adult job whenever I was conscious enough to remember any of that kind of stuff. So it's hard for me to think of him as anything but an old man, like because I've been a kid all his life, basically. He taught me a lot of things. He taught me about music. Taught me foosball actually. He had a that's table tennis. He had a foosball table actually. He was in tournament foosball for a little bit, and he taught us some of the tournament techniques for foosball. And by the way, if you ever want to blow someone's mind at a bar, find that little shadowy foosball table out in the corner. Get one of your friends to play with you who's never seen you play foosball, or just get anybody to play. Make sure you check out whether or not they're a tournament player. You'll know because they'll either move slow or fast. If they move slow, they're not a tournament player. And then learn like 3 tournament moves. You can learn 1 tournament move. Fast shots for me is like the one that's the real kicker, as it were. But you can slam it into that goal so fast that it bounces out, and they will just lose their freaking minds. Like, how the hell did you do that? I didn't even see you move. So that's the kind of stuff that Uncle Dell taught me. And like that I mean, it didn't change my life substantially, but it enriched it. It gave me a way to socially interact with people. There's so many ways that I don't have to socially interact with people. I am not very good at in-person social interaction, good at in-person social interactions. I'm not even very good at digital social interaction or spoken. I'm like really, really awkward conversation. I don't really know. I can never catch the rhythm. I don't know what to say a lot of times, and I can never keep up with things. But like if I play a game, then it's fine. So um my uncle taught me how to play games. There's been a few times that my dad would actually teach me how to play games. A lot of times it was because I was going to a bar with him whenever I was far earlier than I was legally allowed to. Excuse me. I'm sorry. It's a gross experience to have that going. I think I have asthma or something. It's a little hard to tell. It's not actually in response to this, by the way. Um, this doesn't actually affect how often that happens. Sometimes, actually, a lot of times, it helps it stop, which is weird. I think increasing the heat in my air passages is what is doing it because asthma is supposed to flare up with cold air in the air passages. So, um, see, I get upset. That kind of stuff really happens. So There were times that Charles, name slip, oh no. There were times that Charles would actually like say things to me, actually teach me or something, and um, we'd be playing darts, and he'd before we'd actually play darts, he'd give me like a couple of like, hey, do this, 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 and this kind of things, and like I feel that he was just doing that so I wouldn't embarrass him because like it was like team darts, like you alternate. There's two people versus two people. So two people alternate and two other people alternate. And I was alternating with him. And honestly, I think for quite a substantial chunk of my life, he simply didn't want to be on my team because he knew that he'd lose because I wouldn't win. Like if you're 12, you're not gonna win. And he seemed to like winning more than he seemed to like playing a game with me. My brother was very competitive. I think that's one reason why he played the sport so much. He gambles a lot. He doesn't need to gamble. I don't think he loses a bunch or wins a bunch. I don't think it really matters. I think he just is competitive, and that's the reason why he gambles. He needs to be able to win versus someone. It really sucked because my mother did not approve of video games, but my father was addicted to arcades. Do you get it? You see the how that lines up so well? Because I noticed. Dad smokes. Mom doesn't like smoking. Dad plays video games. Mom doesn't like video games. Why did you get married? So, as a trans man, I've had a very bad model in terms of masculinity. I honestly have spent most of my life correcting against my father's sense of masculinity just because it was so toxic or simply so absent. He simply wasn't there to model anything. He was usually just gone. That's why it's so depressing to think about, like, when did dad ever teach me to throw a football? When did dad teach me ever to throw a baseball? When did he teach me to kick a soccer ball? When did he teach me to hit a baseball? None of those time. No time whatsoever did he ever do any of those things. And the thing is, my uncle would be around, and my cousins would be around, and friends of the family would be around. Lots of other relatives would be around. Their kids would be around. All those people would be around, but where was he? Like, he'd show up during parties and family get-togethers and throw the frisbee around then, but he'd usually be hanging out not with me, hanging out with one of the guests who he wanted to hang out with his older male friends. And I don't get why you go through the trouble of having a kid if you're not going to hang out with them. Just plain and simple. It doesn't seem sensible to me. I really wish that he would have made time for me. There's a lot of times where I simply don't know how to do things, and um I know that people think of the very stereotypical stuff. They're like, "Oh, he didn't teach you how to shave." Well, he would never teach me how to shave because whenever I was a teenager, I was growing boobs. Like, I'm a trans man. I don't have the same development cycle as cis men. Like, that's just how it is. So, like, I get that during those years, he wouldn't have been teaching me about masculinity because it's quite obvious why. But um, he didn't teach me about anything, is really where I am. Um, he really just skipped out on my whole childhood. Like, and anytime things were difficult, he simply just left. Which, I mean, what a privileged lifestyle, huh? Like, now, it's not really like my mom picked up the slack, but she can't be responsible for his behavior. Like, it's not her fault that he didn't show up. Although I will say, I gotta actually debate that a little bit. She did pick him as a partner and decide to have a kid with him. So her fault that he's my dad. Um, but um, it's also his fault that he decided to be my dad. I'll give that one a 50-50. And he also owes culpability for her being my mom. He decided to stick her. Um, and both of their choices resulted in me. Neither of them have ever owned their choices, and in some way, I feel it's why I'm trans. I don't know how to talk about that or describe it because this is my own personal thing, my own. This is my transness. I don't think this applies to anyone else. Here goes. I don't think that trans works in any one way, but I do think that it's very interesting. Some of the issues that I have are so directly tied to being like the way that my transness manifests has these issues present in it. I don't think I would have ended up cis with a different pair of parents though. I would have ended up just as trans. It's just that um has a lot of trouble talking about trans things. And I'm gonna get there. Trans things. And I'm gonna get there. Um my father didn't really seem to have a very good sense of his own masculinity. And he had a very odd father himself. His father died whenever um either right before I was born or right after. And um, after his father died, he found out that he was actually an extramarital kid and he wasn't going to get any inheritance from his father. And I just feel that his father's lack of responsibility towards him, whoever his father is, because no, his father never showed up to claim him, and his mother never told him who his father was. She died when I was 13. Way earlier than anybody expected. Sorry, this is such a sinus-filled video. I don't know if anybody's ever going to watch this, but it's helping me to get it out. Not helping my lungs though. No. If I get upset, this happens a lot. It's very hard to talk about my parents at all, to be honest, to really talk honestly about how they were and what they did. Some things I've never actually talked about before, and some of the things that I've said during this, I've never talked to anyone about. So, um, I think I think I might be wrapping it up soon. I think 20 minutes of this was probably enough, but I just really have been noticing how my father's absence in my life has made it very difficult for me to move forward in certain ways because I just don't know how sometimes. And when I try to get to that point where I try to like get advice from people, when I search for advice whenever I talk with my therapist or whatever, I'll often find that this is the kind of stuff that usually a father would have taught his son or his other child, that a parent would have taught their child. It doesn't matter what. Um, His child is a good way to say it because he's never called me his son. And I came out in 2016, so he's had plenty of time to figure out how. He's never called me his son. He's only called me his kid. And there's been times this year where I found out that privately they just refer to me with female pronouns and they call me their daughter. So that kind of ended things for me, to be honest. I I've already gone through so much when it comes to both of them that I'm just really tired of having to go through more and more of it. I just there's only so much that I can handle, and I've had to put them out of my life. Um, I could really use their help financially, I'm not gonna lie, but it's not worth the strings attached. And when I say it's not worth the strings attached, I mean like they want to make me do stuff like sign over power of medical attorney to them. Like some real Britney Spears conservative um what did they put her in? Sorry, I know it's not conservatory, but it's the the way that her father was able to run her entire life and tell her what to do all the time, legally, get all the money, everything like that. Conservatorship. Like my mom was actually trying out that conservatorship stuff this year, and I had to just stop communicating with them because that's just senseless. Um, I I'm still mentally recovering from even the idea of that. I've had to distance myself from them so much just to keep my emotions okay. It's been really difficult to process anything involving them, but there's a lot of times that my mind tries to do it, and um, I've got to start trying. So um, I think that if you're looking for an understanding of what your own masculinity is, there are plenty of places in the world to understand that. There are plenty of places in the world to look to learn about masculinity, and and they're not all of them are so toxic as the places that um that my father seemed to be stuck in. Um I kind of have to use my father as a sort of anti-role model in the absence of anything else, any other solutions. Um, there's just times where I look back on what it is that he did and how he acted, and I think that's not how a man's supposed to act. And it's a shame that that he ever acted in such a way that I would have to use him as a model for what not to do with your own masculinity. But that's being able to accept that, in my opinion, is a part of masculinity. How you how you react to and take a loss is a huge part of masculinity. And I found that my father was very bad at handling loss. Either when it came to personal loss, when it came to the death of his mother. I was his sort, and I was like 12 or 13 when she died. So she was actually my surrogate mother. Like she mothered me more than my own mother, but I had to support him through all of the mourning and stuff because he, his own wife apparently wasn't. She was never offering any emotional support for anyone, certainly not me. So I'm not surprised she never really gave him any. His only emotional support probably was his mother. So that's messed up. I feel like he changed as a person after she died. I think everyone really did, but him especially. After she died, um, he no longer had any chance of ever finding out who his father was. Now, there's always a few ways that one could find out. We call that genetic testing. But neither of my parents are comfortable with the idea of that, which means that neither of them actually want to know the answer. I've actually tried to get genetic testing of my own done to see what my ancestry was, and both times I sent samples, they said that my samples weren't good. Um, and I think it's because I have like the asthma that I have. It means I can't produce enough saliva to give them a good DNA sample. There's also a humongous chunk of the population that cannot be DNA sequenced. It's like a, a much larger percentage than you would possibly expect. So I'm not surprised the sample came back bad. If you send a bad sample twice to 23andMe, they tell you that if you send one in again, they won't refund you next time it doesn't work. Like they basically ban you. So I've been shadow banned by 23andMe. Pass it on. Call your senator. I've found myself often in a role where I'm teaching people online how to be masculine. Like it was very uncomfortable. I once ran a chat room on Skype, like a group chat on Skype, where it was just like it was called Nacho Average Pagans. Nacho as in the chip, and then the rest is spelled regular. Nacho Average Pagans was really fun. I actually ended up kind of meeting my husband in there. It was like basically a place where we'd had a lot of interactions and then a lot of other interactions elsewhere. But it's one of the places where we really founded our relationship. So it's pretty special to me. But I ended up having to leave because all of the people there, they were over 18, mostly over 21. I think we might have had a couple like 19 or 20-year-olds. Um, so they're all old enough to vote, age of majority, etc. And they all had absent father issues, and they all kept on looking to me about it. And I'm internally like the last person you want to look to when it comes to how to be a like to having a surrogate father. But okay, fine. So I try to do my best, and it ended up compromising my own personal comfort and also personal health because it was just terribly mentally unhealthy. So hold on, I need to turn the heater on. There. God, so maybe I need to get a VTuber avatar. Do it like that instead. So, yeah, they were calling me like chat dad and stuff in the group chat, and I had a lot of issues at the time about the fact that I was not going to reproduce. Like, I was having to actually accept the fact that I would never reproduce around the time that they were calling me chat dad. So it was like, could y'all not? And I also, so they were all needy young people in terms of like they all obviously needed a father figure. If I wanted to tell them no, I am not your chat dad, I would be sending them through another rejection cycle from someone they considered to be a father figure. So, like, don't do this to people. Just control yourself. Like, I understand if you're having a lot of pain and you really want to have somebody to look up to as a role model, but don't pin them down with that in a way that they can't say no to, because that's exactly what was happening. And I really feel like quite cognizant of the fact that they were putting me in this position and that I really had no way of basically turning them down. Um, I was the moderator of the whole chat. So, or moderator slash administrator, actually. I administrated the entire chat because the person who created it in the first place basically left as soon as they created it. So it was like classic God scenario. God creates the world, fucks off. Someone picks up the pieces and everybody is looking to them to run everything. And it's like, no, that's not functional. Um For all I know, that chat is still running. I just haven't actually opened Skype in like, I don't know, 5 years. So I wouldn't know. Um, but yeah, I abandoned my chat children. I left them behind like my father left me behind. I am passing down the sins of my forefathers. Will we ever break this eternal cycle? No, that's ridiculous. Like, I'm not actually thinking that. But I do like to actually talk about that, to acknowledge that I understand that subconsciously I could feel that way. There's a lot of abandonment issues that I have, not about people who've abandoned me, but people or projects that I feel like I've abandoned sometimes. And the reason I say feel like is because I have never had a real dependent to abandon. Not like my parents did. So I really can't be responsible for the same level of stuff that they're responsible for. It simply just didn't happen the same way. And I know it's quite significant that I don't have any children. I am 41 years old and I don't have children yet. And um it's hard to say I'm never gonna. It's still hard to say that I'm never gonna have children. I think that's one of the hardest things to deal with is that um, at some point I have to acknowledge that, and I still really haven't gotten a chance to because I'm still trying to figure out what's going on with my own parents. Like, so those are all personal issues. It's been it's been hard to go it alone in terms of not really having parents there for me. It's been hard to go through this with really no one there for me. And I can see times where I like tried to put people in my life to kind of replace them. And it simply just didn't work because those people were never going to be able to take responsibility the same way I couldn't have in that chat. And I'm glad that I'm past that. And I'm glad that I'm closer to moving on from my parents because I think that every day I get a little further and I heal a little more from what happened. I feel a bit better each day at least. So that's good. It's not impossible to transition without having parental figures there or having the support of your parents. I see a lot of articles. Glad that I had the support of my parents through my transition. It was just so amazing and it really changed everything. And I'm reading it like, wow, good for you, I guess. Um, I don't know. It always reads kind of strange to me. I feel that a lot of major news outlets cherry pick stuff like that and never actually talk about the experience of people who simply didn't have that support, or they just really don't really center that discussion much. But each time people talk about that, like I understand they're trying to exhort parents to support their children, but I kind of feel like the experience of people who are abandoned is just completely ignored. Like they're double abandoned, basically, because nobody wants to have the conversation. So I've had the conversation. I'm going to end the conversation because it's been 35 minutes worth of conversation. And at some point, I've got to move on. So thanks for being here. Later.